Last week you mentioned that the bridge in Mitrovica must absolutely be opened, but in a way that avoids conflict with Kosovo's international partners. Have you got any assurances from Kosovo's government that they will delay opening of the bridge at this moment and coordinate it with international partners?
I must emphasize that since the very first moment when discussions on the bridge have started, in every single conversation that I've had with the government, there was always full reassurance that there will be coordination with the international community. And I think that is, of course, not only expected, but it's the rational thing to do, because when we're talking about security on the ground, of course, the first responder is the Kosovo police, the second responder is ULEX, and the third responder is NATO. And they work hand in hand to make sure that there's a peaceful and secure environment for all the people of Kosovo. Secondly, let's not forget that since the Banjskoj attack, our cooperation with NATO has actually increased. We have an additional 1,000 troops, and we have made sure, of course, it was a NATO decision, that the presence of NATO in the border between Kosovo and Serbia is quadrupled. So there's a much bigger presence there that is helping us protect our border and is helping us protect our country from possible incursions from Serbia. So it's an extremely important role, and since 1999 we've worked hand in hand to make sure that every single decision on security, especially those that involve the North, given the destructive role of Serbia and its gangs, is taken together, because we all have the same aim, and as I said, that is peace and security for all of the citizens of Kosovo. And it is important that this work, this very close work, continues. Now, neither the government nor any other institution in Kosovo has given a date, because what I think is crucial is that initially we sit down with our security partners, with our allies and friends and partners, and we build a plan, and then the plan sets the date. It's not the other way around, because you can only know a date once you have all of the security concerns on the table, once you have a clear operational plan on how to deal with those security concerns, how to deal with any concerns that the citizens of Kosovo of any nationality might have, how we can talk more to civil society, and how we can make sure that both mayors of Mitrovica South and Mitrovica North are involved. But perhaps it is crucial at this point to explain why am I pushing forward for this solution.
But before that, can I just ask you,
Sure.
Have you talked to Prime Minister Kurti at this time now, ever since the Quint requested to delay this for some time? Have you discussed with him this matter?
So when you say delay, it would mean that a date was set. The date was never set. What the Quint has requested was that no step is taken in an uncoordinated matter. And in all of my conversations, specifically with the ambassador of the United States, it was clear that they do not oppose the opening of the bridge, but they want to make sure that every step is taken together so that when the bridge is opened, it's a sustainable and a successful effort that does not cause any tension. And that is why on August 1st, which was well before the Quint statement came out, I made it clear that it is indispensable to have this joint implementation plan. And that's not just a wish, that is what actually the Brussels agreements require from all of us that are asking for this EU-led dialogue agreements to be fully implemented.
But obviously, Prime Minister of Kosovo had planned to open the bridge. He had met the Quint, he has informed them about his plan of the opening of the bridge. He announced that there will be some works done, discussions with the citizens. And then we saw Quint reacting jointly and then one by one. So there may have been suggestions that the bridge may open very soon.
Of course, we need to ask for the bridge to open very soon because we are already 8 years too late. But that doesn't, on the other hand, mean that anyone in Kosovo institutions has ever told the Quint, we will entirely disregard your security concerns, or that we want to do this without working with you. I am not aware that the Prime Minister has ever told anyone in the Quint that he will do this without coordinating with them. Quite the opposite, as we have seen, of course, our conversations that we've had, also from the statements that he has made afterwards. It is clear that all Kosovo institutions are all in line when it comes to coordination with the United States of America, with the European Union member states and with all NATO actors, because it is in Kosovo's interest, and no one would benefit from a possible conflict between, as I said before, between Kosovo and NATO. And when I say conflict, I don't mean just conflict in terms of disagreeing in words, but it doesn't make any sense for us to do something without making sure that our security partners are on board, because it would backfire. It would cause a much bigger presence of NATO in the bridge, and that is not in the interest of Kosovo. Plus, it would feed on the narrative of some who are insisting that this must become a topic for the dialogue with Serbia again. And on this, I have been very clear. I think it is absolutely not in Kosovo's interest, is also against its constitution and sovereignty to go and have a dialogue with Serbia on the issue of the bridge.
So as of right now, can we say safely that the bridge will not open at this time?
Well, it depends what it means at this time, because our consultations with the international community are continuing. And of course, I discussed this with the KFOR commander today. I will have very important NATO meetings starting tomorrow and all of August before moving on with international travel. And in all of these high-level meetings with NATO, we will explain the following, if I might have a minute. So, some are saying discuss this in the dialogue. Well, there's absolutely no space for this, but at the same time, as I said, it would be not in the interest of Kosovo or even in the region. It would.
Is insisting
it
on
would.
that.
It would, and we will clarify this
Yeah.
with the high-level NATO delegations that are starting their visits in the next couple of days. But it would be actually a violation of the EU-led agreements if we would do that. It would be in contradiction of everything that the EU-led agreements have achieved, including the basic agreement of February 2023. Now, in 2014, in Brussels, an agreement was reached between Kosovo and Serbia when it comes to revitalizing the bridge. It says, first of all, that this plan includes the following elements. One is to follow and to respect Kosovo law. So Kosovo law must be respected on any solution forward. Secondly, it talks about the obligation of the EU to do a technical evaluation and then to practically implement the revitalization and restoration of the bridge. All of this has been done and has been concluded. And then afterwards, in August 2015, there's a second agreement that clarifies further what are the steps. And paragraph 2 of this agreement is of a critical importance. It says that the bridge will open for all traffic by summer and not later than the end of June 2016. And it also talks about pedestrians and so on. It talks about the role of the EU in helping economic integration of the citizens and so on and so forth. It doesn't mention any role for Serbia, neither does the first document. And then there are some that are saying, but then you have to build an implementation plan. No need. There is an implementation plan. It was agreed on the 5th of August 2016, and it's so detailed that you would be surprised. So in all of this implementation plan, you can see a role for the mayors of Mitrovica North and Mitrovica South. You can see a role for those who would have to rebuild the road of King Petar Street, as they call it, and of course to revitalize and facilitate contacts between people in Mitrovica South and North, and exchanges and understanding. It also sets a role for KFOR and ULEX, which is why I said we have an obligation that stems from the EU-led dialogue. It says Kosovo Police, ULEX, and KFOR, in line with their respective mandates as first, second, and third responder, will ensure a safe and secure environment. They will consult on appropriate security measures, including with the two mayors. So this is what happens right now. There is no word over here that negotiations between Kosovo and Serbia must continue on implementation. Quite the opposite. They look at this issue as concluded, and then they invite the parties to talk about implementation plans for other issues, such as the energy, the association, and so on and so forth, and telecom. So both telecom and energy are finished, as you know. So, and
there's the bridge has
so
never
all
opened.
of these. Yes, it has not, for a very clear issue, because the mayor of Mitrovica North, who had a role here in the past, and of course the current mayor also had a role, was not cooperative on this regard. But I strongly believe that we should focus to the basics. Is it in the interest of citizens of all ethnicities to work with one another, to contact one another, to be able to exchange.
Local Serbs fear opening the bridge.
So again, let's go back to the basics. There are two other bridges, as you know, two other bridges which are open to traffic. So there are already bridges that are open to traffic that they are not fearing. What's to fear if a third bridge is simply open to traffic?
It's become a symbol of
well, it has unfortunately become a symbol of separation, which is why we should all join forces in fighting separation and working for integration. Because in this century, where some of the most important values of the Euro-Atlantic community are multi-ethnicity, bringing people together, building bridges, we should not allow, without any, of course, specific big reason, to block people from communicating, from driving to both parts, the same way that from Pristina we drive to Gračanica without a problem, the same way that from Vitia you go to Klokot. So I'm talking about Albanian majority and Serbian minority municipalities. And as I said, traffic already goes from south to north and backwards. No. So this wouldn't be anything new. So we need to psychologically even remove the barriers that are keeping people from working with one another.
What did the commander of KFOR say today at the meeting when you told him that this issue shouldn't go back on the dialogue?
So, of course, we will continue our discussions. What I think is crucial is his request that we fully coordinate with NATO. And I agree with that. And, of course, I strongly believe that every step needs to be coordinated with NATO. Nevertheless, we also have a very clear view that two agreements and one implementation plan have been achieved. There was absolutely no space left for anything else to be discussed in Brussels. This issue has been concluded, and now we're asking for the EU-led dialogue agreements to be implemented. In addition to that, last year we had the basic agreement, Article 10 of which clearly requires that all past dialogue agreements should be implemented. So it would be also against the basic agreement which was achieved lately if we would reopen the agreements rather than just implement them. There's absolutely no reason to discuss this issue with Serbia, and I believe the understanding of our friends and partners in all of my conversations with them when we explain all of these is growing, is really growing.
Are
We're
you
getting
on the
there.
same page with the Prime Minister Kurti? When was the last time you discussed with him this matter?
Well, I would love if this question is posed to the Prime Minister as often as it's posed to me. When we last spoke about this issue, probably it was about a month ago, if I'm not mistaken, and we had a clear agreement on two issues. One, that this must not become part of the dialogue with Serbia, and secondly, that there must be coordination with the NATO presence here in Kosovo, which includes, of course, our EU partners that are members of NATO and others that are not in the EU, but also, of course, the United States of America as our main security partner. So we didn't have, since then, we did not rediscuss this issue because I did not see anything new. Of course, we need to continue. It doesn't mean that necessarily all of the details or the approach are the same, but on these two issues we were on the same page.
I want to discuss the security situation in Mitrovica because the ambassador said that there is a real risk that could increase the threat of potential violence. What is the current security assessment of the situation regarding the bridge opening based on the information you have and that you can share with the public? Where is the threat coming from?
So the threat definitely does not come from the Albanian population, and I strongly believe it does not come from the Serb citizens who just want to have a normal life in the northern municipalities either. There is a constant threat, as we all know, and as we've said it publicly many times, from forces that are financed, instigated, as well as pushed politically and trained militarily by Serbia. Of course, it is in Serbia's interest to always cause some sort of attention in Kosovo. And we're talking about people who lead gangs, we're talking about people who are terrorists and paramilitary forces. And these people are still free, led by Radojic in Serbia. They are free.
Kosovo too? Is there anyone of them?
Well, of course, we cannot release all of the details, but of course, they do have people within Kosovo who still try to hide their weapons, even as recent as just a few days ago. As you know, our police is still confiscating weapons that are hidden by certain people in the north. that cooperate with these gangs in Serbia, and of course always under the orders of the political mastermind of this, who is Aleksandar Vučić. And in this sense, we need to make sure, and as the ambassador said, that when we do this, we do it in a coordinated way, because doing it in an uncoordinated way, it might mean that there might be tensions that may risk lives, and we're talking here about lives of Kosovo police, lives of Kosovo citizens, as well as life of NATO soldiers, because they will get involved. So just to make sure that when it's done in a way that it's done properly, it's long term, but it's also secure. That is why we're all insisting that we sit down, and we agree that this is not an issue to be discussed with Serbia. We have to have everyone on the same page. I believe most of our international partners are already on that page, but we still need to work on this. And secondly, that this is an issue to be discussed and agreed when it comes to the implementation plan, not on the issue of whether the bridge should be opened. There's no question mark on that among our partners.
We know that, it's clear, but if Prime Minister continues with his plan and decides to open the bridge, can that bring to the confrontation, as you said, between KFOR soldiers and Kosovo authorities?
I don't think there's an if on that. The Prime Minister has been very clear that he will continue to coordinate with partners. I will continue as head of state and commander of the Kosovo Security Force to coordinate with partners. It is in our joint interest to have a successful opening of the bridge, which truly turns, as the agreements have provided, into a symbol, the symbol, in fact it says, the symbol of normalization in Kosovo. So it needs to be seen, in fact, as a celebration of multi-ethnicity, as a celebration of the values that we all share, rather than something that makes us argue with one another.
But locals in the north don't see it that way.
Well, I wouldn't generalize, to be very honest. I wouldn't generalize. Locals have been crossing the bridge on foot a lot. You know, you have people from Mitrovica, the south, who go and buy their cheese that actually is quite famous in the north. And there are Serbs from the north who go and visit a doctor in the south who they trust. There is communication all the time. It's just to make it even easier for them.
Even the civil society situation, organizations say that they have not felt furthest from Kosovo government or Kosovo authorities ever before. That this has been the worst relationship they've had with Kosovo authorities.
That's a different question. I think on that we all need to work harder to make sure that we listen to civil society, we listen to the citizens, we listen to their concerns and explain perhaps better why is it important to do these things.
Can you do more on that? Do you meet Serbian representatives
I do,
citizens?
But as you know, in the past 2 years, many of the Serb citizens sometimes feel unsafe to make these meetings public because they immediately get threats. And I'm not only talking about Serbs in the north, Serbs in other municipalities. Whenever they would confirm a meeting and it would happen, they would say, please don't make it public, because immediately we're receiving threats from people either in Serbia or that are in some way affiliated with them. And we don't want to cause any harm to them, because for me this is not a publicity thing. It's about making sure that we listen to their concerns and we help them. For example, one of the things that we're working on is mostly empowering women and how we can do more in this regard. But at the same time, I do not want to publicize work that would endanger any of them. As we've seen, sometimes these Serb gangs go and burn down their house or their cars, threaten their kids in the kindergarten. So it's very important that their work is done in a way that they are also kept safe. But as I said, the bridge, in fact, the opening of the bridge and communication and just normalizing this, because it's not normal to not allow cars to cross through a bridge when in fact other bridges are being used for the same. That bridge has been destined since it was built for also driving on it. It has been revitalized, and the European Union has paid for projects to make it passable by cars as well as trucks, not just cars. So for that reason, I strongly believe that the bridge would be one of the elements that will make people feel more connected and facilitate this exchange rather than have an opposite effect. Now, on many other issues, of course, it's very important that we listen to their concerns and tell them that, for example, the Kosovo police in the north is for them to make them feel safe and so on. There needs to be further communication and further efforts from everyone in the institutions, because we want all of our citizens to feel safe, to feel secure, to know that Kosovo is their home, to know that they can prosper in Kosovo, and we should continue to do everything that we can to make sure that they feel like that. But let me, I know that sometimes the perception, just one sentence, the perception and what is actually happening in the reality differ. According to the OSCE reports, it is clear that in the past 3 years there has been a constant decline of interethnic violence. And these are numbers that can be confirmed. And I'm talking about the OSCE, not talking about just our institutions. A constant decline, including in the first few months of this year, of interethnic violence. There hasn't been an increase on any category when it comes to crimes that involve Serbs and so on and so forth. In fact, there has been an increase only in one category, and that is crimes against the Albanian majority. That has been the only increase when it comes to the crimes that have been
However,
reported.
now the local Serbian community is complaining on the behavior of Kosovo police in the north. They're also saying that they're not talking in Serbian language as they expected, that they're not writing tickets in Serbian, that they don't understand what they get. These are some kind of complaints that we get, besides the one about presence of Kosovo police. I would stick a bit more.
They can be resolved. These are all issues that can be resolved, and it's important that they are expressing them. And there's also the police inspectorate that I believe is doing an excellent job on dealing with these issues.
I would stick a bit more on the north. Are you supporting Kosovo governments in the actions they undertook in the north, which for most of them international community said that those were unilateral and uncoordinated in past 2 years?
In the past 2 years, well, it depends. Actions as such were all legitimate, all in line with the Constitution. But there are cases when we've had discussions with the government on what is the right way to do it, and how do we make sure that an action that is undertaken is sustainable, and it's not just a success of the moment, but it's a sustainable success. And whenever, for example, like last year when we had these tensions in May 2023, we discussed, because my persistence, of course, was that it needs to be coordinated with NATO so that there would be no violence, because then the damage, of course, there is something that we gain, but everything, when you lead a country, everything needs to have you need to look at the cost benefit, what you gain, but also what you lose. And if in the eyes of the international community, and primarily NATO, for uncoordinated action, then we're seen as people who cause conflicts, people who cause problems, people who cause tensions. That damages much bigger plans for Kosovo, which is joining NATO, which is, of course, starting with BFP and then NATO, although I believe now we have to start directly about NATO and a membership action plan.
And this is currently on the pause due to the actions.
We are, as I said, we are under discussion, not necessarily is it in the pause. Our institutions need to continue the work of preparing all of the documents.
The US said that they are losing the reducing enthusiasm to help Kosovo.
That's my point. That's my point, because if we go back, as you know, I've been working in institutions for more than 2 decades. If we go back to the time when Kosovo declared independence, of course we were implementing some concessions which were not hurting Kosovo's sovereignty, but at the same time, in exchange of these concessions, where we're getting the full support of the international community on our independence, on recognitions, and on memberships. I think it's about time that we get back to that kind of relationship with the international community, because what we get in exchange of coordination, because people see it as some sort of a bad or dirty word, we only get good things out of coordination. We get more safety, we get more sovereignty,
but it seems
we
like
get more membership.
Kosovo is not coordinated.
And that's why, because your question was, are there times when we don't agree with the government? As I said, the approach sometimes has not, I would have taken a different approach, but definitely I do not question, and I don't see how anyone can question the legitimacy and the constitutionality of all of the actions that were undertaken. But if we want them to be sustainable... Is Kosovo risking the partnership at this point with international allies? Well, I think it's important that the international allies give their own evaluation on whether they see the relationship as risk or not. So when it comes to, in every single meeting that I have with our international partners, and as you know, I've had plenty, hundreds, just like last year, and even more this year in this tempo. In every single international contact that we've had, of course, there's a constant request for coordination, but the request for coordination is not because they need this for their own ego. It's because they need to make sure that they push Kosovo forward towards international organizations in a successful way.
And it seems that Kosovo is not listening. Kosovo has lost the opportunity to become part of the Council of Europe because it did not take the step the international community has asked Kosovo to submit the draft statute of the Association of Serb Majority Municipalities to the Constitutional Court.
It is, of course, this is still an open issue. We cannot say that the opportunity was lost. The opportunity is still open. We just need to make sure that we work with all member states, because in the Council of Europe, it's a much bigger group than just the EU, and find a way forward so that Kosovo can get its deserved place, because those who lose most are the citizens. This is strictly a human rights issue and should not be politicized. And all people of all ethnicities lose out of membership in the Council of Europe. But I still believe that there is...
Why is Kosovo hesitating moving forward with this draft and taking it to the Constitutional Court?
I believe there's no hesitation on taking the draft to the Constitutional Court per se, but there is a hesitation on moving on with the unilateral implementation of the basic agreement when Serbia has clearly, and based on international law, withdrawn from it. Serbia has withdrawn from the agreement.
But Kosovo is paying the price, Serbia isn't.
I do understand, and that's where we come to the issue of what kind of approach you take when you work with international partners to keep them on your side. Because if we all know and we all agree that Serbia has withdrawn from that agreement, I believe that we have to sit down with our partners and say, if Serbia is not going to implement, and you're still asking us to unilaterally implement, we need to know what we get, what kind of security guarantees we get in return, how do we revive the recognition campaign for Kosovo, and how do we get to these international organizations in return.
Have these discussions started, or is it something that is expected to happen?
I've certainly started these discussions for more than a year ago, to
be honest. What is the feedback that you get?
The feedback, well, they say, we'll see. We still don't have a final answer, but
so
we're getting a much clearer answer these days.
And Serbia,
unfortunately, and this is also a result of the very biased approach that the EU-led dialogue has had, where one of the parties, so it's kind of the table is upside down. You can't really have a dialogue on a table where one of the parties is under sanctions for defending its sovereignty and constitution, and the other party, after committing an act of aggression, has not paid any price, after injuring 93 soldiers of NATO, some of which have lost their limbs. Complete impunity for those who committed the crimes. So Serbia, unfortunately, is getting a bad message. It kind of encourages them to have this approach that they are having right now. But I do have confidence that things are changing. Now with the new European Commission, I do hope that the reality on the ground, the reality on the actions that Kosovo and Serbia undertook, even in the dialogue, someone should see the list of non-implementation by Serbia. It's insanely long.
But do you expect new energy with the new leadership?
Absolutely, because I expect fairness. I expect equality. A dialogue on an equal footing produces results.
You said Kosovo didn't have that.
No,
it wasn't treated that way.
Absolutely not. Look at all these three agreements. And now the guys in charge of the EU-led dialogue are telling us to reopen this issue and entirely ignore these. We're not going to ignore these. We want to fully implement these in full coordination with our partners.
But do you agree with three
Serbia
conditions?
Has no say on this. What
All
three
the
conditions?
Three conditions Prime Minister put for the continuation of the dialogue on handing over Radojic, on withdrawal of the Brnabić letter.
What I think, of course, each person leads a dialogue based on their approach. They have a certain style. No person is the same. We differ. I would not have gone to Brussels that day. I would definitely have not gone to Brussels without removing the EU measures against Kosovo. It makes absolutely no sense
so
to go to Brussels.
The dialogue should not continue without removing
the measures were very close to be removed. And I would have simply said, I cannot come to Brussels when my people are struggling because projects on drinking water that would have brought the drinking water to the people of Kosovo, projects in favor of multi-ethnicity, projects that bring young people together, are being blocked. And I would have said, I can't do it as long as my people are being punished, because I represent my people, and I cannot come unless you remove...
Should this be condition for return to the table?
I believe it should have been. Now, of course, the Prime Minister has gone there, and of course there are different conditions.
But in future, yeah.
But when it comes to the signing, I believe, as I said, if the international community is all saying, no one can tell us any longer Serbia will implement. They are clearly reiterating their position that they have withdrawn from this legally binding treaty. In international law, when one party withdraws, there's no agreement for the others. But that doesn't mean we should not have an agreement with our allies and our partners. Article 1 to 11, if we want to implement this, we need to know, how do we get the security guarantees? How do we get to NATO? How do we move on towards the EU? And of course, the Council of Europe should be done immediately.
Is all that possible with this Prime Minister?
We are 14 years too late. Of course it's possible. Of course it's possible for any Prime Minister. And I believe that the Council of Europe should have been done in 2010. So we are 14 years too late with applying for the Council of Europe. And I do hope that this will be seen as a human rights issue. I believe that anyone who follows his or her constitution, anyone who follows his or her people's and country's interest is able to achieve all of these. But we need to get back, as I said, to the strategy of not having expectations from Serbia. We need to have a deal with our partners. And when I say a deal, I don't mean in a transactional way. In fact, I mean in terms of a mutual trust. Because the most important ingredient in any relationship, especially when it comes to defense and security, is trust. We need to get back to that.
Last topic on Banjska. Madam President, Kosovo has rejected Serbia's request for the Banjska case. How do you view this decision?
I believe the Ministry of Justice should have more details, but I believe that the rejection has been made on legal grounds because the request has been made in a violation of some of the legal criteria that need to be fulfilled in order for international legal cooperation to happen.
But do you think Kosovo and Serbia should cooperate on this issue?
I believe that Serbia and Kosovo both have enough evidence, even without cooperating with one another, for Radojic to be arrested, and not just him, but there are plenty others who have participated in the act of aggression against Kosovo. And I believe if legal criteria are met in future requests, and of course that can happen as well, because that has also been resolved in the EU-led dialogue on how this mutual legal cooperation happens. But let me reiterate one fact. There's a lot of talk about the people who have implemented that act of aggression. We should not forget who ordered it. Aleksandar Vučić has ordered the Banjska attack. Our NATO partners know this very well. We should not.
Told you that?
Let me reiterate, our NATO partners know this very well. He was the mastermind, and he continues to be the mastermind of any attack and any tension, not just in Kosovo, but the rest of the region as well. So we all need to be mindful, because when you deal with minds like that, you need to gather around, regroup, reorganize, understand who your friends and partners are, and work with them to prevent such scenarios which are trying to bring back our region to the 90s.
Has any of Kosovo's allies confirmed this?
You do know that I would not say something like that just because I believe it is like that. This is not just an assumption. It's not a political assumption. I know for a fact that Aleksandar Vučić is directly involved in ordering the Banjska attack.
Why is the
And
West
as I said,
hesitant?
our NATO, well, that is a question that others need to be asked.
Do you ask them about that?
All the time.
What do they say?
In every single meeting. Well, I get different answers depending on who I ask.
Like?
I need to keep some things under discretion because of the rules of diplomacy. But we continue to work with our partners. There is no other way. Kosovo's place is in Euro-Atlantic institutions. These are countries with which we share the same values, the same foundational values that stand at the foundations of our country. So despite of little agreements on approaches that we might have, we're going to end up as part of that family sooner or later, and we need to work together on this. Even the biggest countries and the biggest superpowers like the United States of America publicly state we need to do things together with friends. We can't do things alone. Of course, the same principle applies also for Kosovo, especially when we know that in the ground, security in the ground, our borders are protected jointly between our men and women in uniform and the men and women in uniform from the countries all the way to the United States.